I think Donald has talked a lot of things about health reform, which again gets very complicated. But for a lot of individuals, like a business owner, like a Fred, you're a small business owner, you have to figure out what to do for the next 1 or 2 years. And I think that's why it's good to have people like John Snell who work with the customer, like a small business owner, individual, and can help you how to navigate through this very complex environment. I first know John back in 2009 when I was working for Prudential, and I have one customer who lost a job from IBM and needs health insurance. So I contacted John, and by talking with him, I know this guy really knows the health insurance industry so well. He has been in that business for about 17 years, and also is always willing to help me. So after I read his bio, then I realized why he's been so kind. Because he has been married since 1976, so has a very stable wife support him, and he's also an elder in his church. And that's why John, it's been a pleasure getting to know you. And so again, what John gonna do? One thing is, many of us we are approaching the big 60. So once you get to 65, you gotta worry about Medicare. And so in that area, it's very complicated. And John knows Medicare very well. Recently, I took him to visit one of my CPA accountant friends. That guy is 64. So currently, he has a small group health insurance for him. He's maybe 3 or 4 employees, and he's trying to decide what to do when he reaches age 65. And he still has a daughter, has some type of disease. So I got John involved, and John spent a lot of time with him without making any one penny, but he gave this guy a lot of good suggestions. So that's why I asked John to kind of talk with you about some of the health insurance with you. So let's give John a big welcome.
Thank you very much, Jimmy, for those kind words. I want to thank Dr. Long and, of course, Jimmy again for including me in the meeting today. Don, my compliments on the presentation. Don took essentially a 2,500-page law and boiled it down into 40 minutes or so. That's pretty darn good, I'd say. Very good. Let me just say this as we begin. Don is talking about law changes, some of which have occurred and some of which are slated to occur, and whether or not they occur, it's a bit of the roll of the dice, as you've heard, because of the lawsuits. Today, I'm basically going to talk with you about the way things are, because I'm an insurance agent. I deal with people about the way things are according to the current law. And most of my talk today will be on the small group market. And I'm going to give you 6 rules to follow in the small group market. They're not hard. I think you'll appreciate them. They'll be good guidelines for you if you are a business owner and thinking about setting up a small group market. The second thing I'll address briefly is the individual market in Georgia. And those are 2 different markets, the individual family market and the small group market. And basically what I'm going to say about the individual market is I'm going to give you some warnings, because there are some landmines that you can step on in the individual market, and you'll be sorry if you step on a landmine. I'm using colorful battle language there, obviously. And then the third thing, as Jimmy mentioned, I will take a few minutes at the very end to address some Medicare issues. But the bulk of our time is going to be spent on the small group market. Now, to help me out, I'd just like to see a show of hands for those of you who own a small business. How many small business owners do we have? Okay, we have 6, 7. Very good. So, I don't know if you already have a group plan or not, but very shortly you'll see there are advantages to group plans over individual coverage. And there are also some added financial responsibilities that you'll see if you're a small business owner with a group plan. And I'm confident if you're a successful small business owner, you'll be able to figure out whether or not a small group health plan is the wisest choice for you. And you can do that in consult with me. I'd be happy to talk to you. And certainly, I know you have other advisors as well. I'm taking the title of my talk from the recent Travelers commercials you maybe have seen on TV. Travelers is a big property and casualty insurance company, and they've got a series of commercials about taking the scary out of insurance. And maybe you remember the commercial. There's one with a little animated bunny, and all of a sudden a rattlesnake appears, and it's about ready to bite the bunny. And the rattle, instead of being a real rattlesnake rattle, it's a baby rattle. And the bunny falls over laughing. And I think the point of that commercial is Travelers, when they fix cars, they want to use original parts on the cars, not knockoff parts when cars are repaired. Now that's about property and casualty business. But I think it's even more scary in the health insurance world because of the possible changes. And some people say that knowledge is power, and that's true. But knowledge also takes the fear out of things. And today, my primary goal, my course objective, if you were taking a continuing education class for credit, would be to help take the fear, the lack of confidence that you may feel out of your heart, out of your mind about health insurance. It's not rocket science, and I think together we can figure it out. Okay. Let me advance these slides here. I'm sure you're familiar with caveats, and I don't want to steal anything from your tax professional, your tax advisor, or your legal advisor. But basically, you need to remember that whenever you set up any kind of group benefit plan, you need to get in consult with your advisors. It's the right thing to do. Setting up a group plan, a health plan, involves financial, tax reporting, legal, and contractual responsibilities. So, I'm happy to advise you, but you need to involve your other advisors as well on the front end. And depending on the style, the kind of business tax entity you've set up, and with the tax reform changes, this small business health tax credit that's new in 2010, the year just ended, and continues on for the next several years, your tax advisor can help you know if you can take advantage of that. And again, your business formation, the kind of entity you are, could impact the taxation. So, that's why you definitely need to involve your professional advisors. Okay, now we're going to get into the 6 key rules or points to remember in regard to health insurance. And as we have this, we're going to continue with, just as you want to consult with your knowledgeable and capable tax and legal advisors, if you're going to deal with an agent, you better make sure they know something about the kind of insurance you're looking for. You know, Jimmy and I both started in the life insurance industry, and I'm still life licensed. I do some life insurance. But most of my business is health. I'm also property and casualty licensed. I do some auto and homeowners coverage. I write some business general liability and property coverage. But it's not my favorite thing to do. And frankly, I would prefer to refer that business on to a colleague who is more into the property and casualty market. My business is essentially health and life. And so, if you're getting ready to set up a plan, or if you've got a plan and you don't like your agent, don't feel like your agent's been performing, maybe your agent's been performing, but you don't like the output of the performance, think about changing agents. So why use an agent? Well, number one, it doesn't cost you a dime extra to use a health insurance agent. The insurance company pays the agent, you don't. We're not attorneys, we're not CPAs, we don't charge hourly rates. We work for you to try and get your business and become your agent. And if we are able to do that and place your business, the insurance company compensates us. It's sort of like buying a house. Why wouldn't you use a real estate agent? Typically, you don't pay the agent. It's paid from the closing of the house you buy. They get a share of that purchase price. Okay, so doesn't it make sense, if you're looking for a group health plan, to offload some or the majority of the search and secure process to someone who knows the ropes? Of course it does. A good agent will save you time, energy, and likely money. Will save you premium dollars as your knowledgeable and capable agent shops and consults with you on the plan you want, and then brings in the quotes for you to review from as many as a half a dozen or more insurance carriers. So rule number one, to take the scary out of health insurance, work with an agent. It's a no-brainer. Rule number two to remember. Generally, group coverage is always, always, always superior to individual health coverage. Now, why do I say that? Well, number one, in Georgia, if your business is in Georgia, group coverage is guaranteed issue. Nobody can be declined. You could have a working population of folk who have cancer, heart conditions, AIDS. The group will be underwritten. Now, you'll pay a hefty premium for that group, but the group cannot be declined if you can afford the rate. So, how about individual coverage in Georgia? It's one of the landmines. If you have a serious health condition, you will be declined in the individual health market. Now, here's an example of a good law's unintended consequence. Under health reform, it just became law recently that children under 19, I believe, is the age limit, so 18 and under, you can no longer look at their pre-existing conditions to decline them. Well, every law has unintended consequences. You know what the insurance companies did? They said, well, that's all jolly well and good, but we won't write policies on children anymore. There's got to be an adult on the policy. We used to sell child-only policies, and they were for basically healthy kids. But if you have a sick child, the best coverage you're going to get is through group coverage. Okay, why else is group coverage superior? It almost always includes maternity. You can hardly buy an individual policy in Georgia anymore that includes maternity. Now, Blue Cross is an exception. You can buy maternity from them under an individual or family plan. And you'll pay dearly for it as an extra rider. And you can't be pregnant when you buy it. If you're pregnant, you can't get the policy. That's a declined condition. So, not so in a group. You could have a group, female-owned business, 10 women, they're all pregnant. They want to start a group, they can. They'll be covered from day one. It's just a question of how much you're going to pay for it. Number three, plan designs are generally more liberal under group coverage. If you're familiar with plan designs in the individual market, they typically limit the number of doctor visits at the price of a copay, and if you exceed a certain number of visits in a calendar year, it's going to go against your deductible. And typically, many individual plans have a separate deductible for the drug card. That typically doesn't happen in the group industry. You get better benefits, no limits, typically in the group market. Okay, so in conclusion, the group market is always superior to the individual, at least in Georgia, and that could vary state to state. But today, in Georgia, those are the facts. And if you can get group coverage, because you're a good employee, you get it and you keep it. And that's the problem, is keeping it. I used to be in banking. I went through 4 bank mergers. Now, I was able to stay employed, but after the last merger, I was fed up with the politics. I got out. I became a self-employed agent at Prudential. I had to be careful about my health insurance. I had 2 very sick children. And at that time I had Prudential HMO coverage. Well, by going to Prudential, I was able to keep that coverage. Somebody was watching out for me. Prudential HMO, it's gone. That company's been sold. They're no longer in business. Some of you are currently employed and you have group coverage. But watch out if your business gets bought and you get laid off. Maybe you'll be able to have some COBRA for a while, but what's going to happen at the end of COBRA? So the key is not only getting it, it's keeping it. And as a business owner, you're in the driver's seat to get and keep group coverage as long as you can afford it. So rule number 2, if you can get group coverage, get it. It's always better. And then keep it. Rule number 3. Jimmy, would you begin to pass up those? I do have a handout. And if you have a friend that you want to take the handout, let us know. I have plenty. I made 60 copies thinking we were going to have a room full. So there's certainly one for everybody in here today. So let's say that you're a business owner and you don't have a group yet, or you do, and you'd like to start a group if you don't have one. Or maybe you'd like to reshop your group. And maybe you didn't use an agent before when you set your group up. How do you start? We'll just wait till everybody has a handout. I want you to flip the handout to the side that doesn't have the business card. Start on the side that doesn't have the business card. Turn it over to the side that doesn't have the business card. Okay, that side is an employee census form. To get a quote for a group, we have to have certain information. And that form gives your agent the information. The agent has to know the full business legal name of your business, the address of the business, including zip code. And it's helpful to know, obviously, the street address of the city. It's also helpful to know the county. And then your agent needs to see a list of your eligible employees. Generally, you have to cover your full-time employees. Now, what's a full-time employee? Well, the insurers will give you some guidelines. I think some will allow you to go down as low as 25 hours a week. If somebody works at least 25 hours, you could consider them full-time. But you could set a higher number. You could set 30. You could set 40. Okay? You get to pick the hours within reasonable limits. So you're going to construct that list, and you're going to list the eligibles, and we need ages or dates of birth for both the employee, and if the employee has a spouse to cover, we need the spouse's age and date of birth. And then finally, if kids are to be covered, we need to know the number of children. Don't need to know their ages or their gender. We need to know the number of kids. So that's how you begin. You have to start with a census. And what your agent will do then is he'll take that census. The agent will send it off either through a brokerage agency, or the agent will send it directly to the insurance companies. Now when I shop, I typically shop half a dozen group insurers in the state of Georgia. Those would be Aetna, Blue Cross, Coventry, Humana, Kaiser, United Healthcare. There is a new insurer in Georgia. Used to be one of the old Blue Crosses up in Ohio. It's called Consumers Life. That's the trade name in Georgia. But it's the old Mutual of Ohio. And they're new. They're strictly a PPO player. Their rates are pretty good. So we use that census and we go shop. Now you'll note here on the slide, some of you may be self-employed and you don't have any employees besides yourself. So sorry. It takes 2 to tango if you're going to do a dance, a tango. It takes 2 employees to do a small group. If you're self-employed and you don't have another employee, you can't do it. Now if you're self-employed and don't have another employee, be creative. If you're married, make your spouse part owner of your business. Prove it with the legal documentation. And you can do a husband and wife two-person group in Georgia.
You want to flip?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Jimmy. The absent-minded professor. Okay. Two-employee group, that's the minimum. But you start getting better rates when you have 5 covered employees. Under 5, the insurer deems your group to have non-optimal size, and they will add in an extra premium for non-optimal size. That premium load for non-optimal size ends when you have 5 or more covered. Okay. If you'll flip over your sheet, you'll see the kinds of documentation once we get the quotes and you pick the plan and the insurance company you want. If you flip it over to the side where the business card is, to the side with the business card, I see some people looking at the wrong side. That will give you a checklist of items that are typically required to get the group up and running. Now, what I've given you is an Aetna checklist. I work with a lot of insurers. Their checklist is pretty easy. Some carriers have a slightly longer list, but this is representative. And you'll note the first item is there's an employer form that has to be completed. That's sort of a contract between you and the insurance company. Now, it is a month-to-month contract. It is not a binding contract that requires you to do a full year with the insurance company. It is a month-to-month contract. Okay? Second thing on the form is you have to take your group through underwriting. The insurance company's wanting to know how healthy you are. And so employee applications have to be completed. Now, I'm not giving you an employee application today. I didn't bring an employer app. But typically the employee app is the longest, most complicated thing that has to be completed. And your agent can come out and do a presentation to you and your employees and go over the paperwork and actually have them begin to fill it out there at the meeting so that it doesn't become a time drain or a hassle for your employees to complete the paperwork. Then you'll notice there are some other forms. The most arcane form that's required on that list is the DOL-4 form. That's the Georgia Quarterly State Filing Form. And that form is useful to the insurer because that form proves who your employees are. You know, Medicare is concerned about fraud and abuse. Insurers, for-profit insurance companies are concerned about fraud and abuse. And they don't want to cover imaginary employees. They want to cover real employees. And so, if your employee is new and doesn't show up on the Department of Labor form, then we have to get a copy of the W-9, typically, or a payroll stub of some kind to prove that this person is really an employee. Okay. There is a sub-rule that you need to know. You can't discriminate with group plans, nor with a group health plan. You have to be non-discriminatory. And beyond that, the insurance company wants to make sure that you're getting enough healthy people into the group, as well as some sick people. Obviously, the sick people want it, but how about the healthy people? So you have to have in the group 75% of your employees who are eligible after valid waivers. What does that mean? Let's just take some raw numbers. Let's say that you had 10 employees. Let's forget about my proviso about a valid waiver. 75%. Okay, if you enroll 7, certainly 8 employees, that group will pass muster with the insurance company. But what is a valid waiver? Some of your employees may have coverage from their spouse's group plan, and they could turn down your plan. That's called a valid waiver. Some of your employees could be covered by Medicare because they're older. That's a valid waiver. And for some insurers, they will allow an employee who has individual health coverage to call that a valid waiver. Not every insurance company will, but some will. So let me go back to the illustration. Let's say you have a group of 10 males, and they're all young, and they all feel they're invincible, as Don said. They have S on their chest for Superman. They're invincible. They're never going to get sick. And try as you might to persuade those young males to come into your plan, only 5 want it. And the other 5 who say no don't have any health insurance. They're not married. They don't have a valid waiver. They're young. They're not covered by Medicare. That plan will not fly. You'll be turned down. So group coverage is guaranteed issue, but you have to meet some mathematical requirements, and your agent can help you deal with those. All right, let's recap. Rule number 1 was always use a knowledgeable agent. Rule number 2, you need to get group coverage if you can and keep it, or start it, because it's better. And rule number 3, it takes at least 2 to tango. So you got to have at least 2 employees to get a group quoted and to get it started. Rule number 4. You're a smart business owner. You'd like to minimize your group costs while maintaining reasonably good benefits. How can you do it? How can you design the most economical group? Well, what you need to know is rates are age and gender based. Now think about it. I'm 58, believe it or not. I'm feeling 58. I play tennis. I've got aches and pains like I never had. As we get older, we all start to break down. It's inevitable. Older people have higher health costs. Now, I'm not saying anything about their work ethic. I work hard. You might have some older employees. I'm just telling you why your rates are going to be higher. If your employees are over 50, and definitely if they're over 60, you're going to pay more. Does that make sense? It should. Let's say you have a workforce that's largely women. I'm not against women. I just want you to know women have babies. And if they are in childbearing ages, they are rated for maternity even if they are single. You know, single women do have babies in this country. And the insurance company wants to be there to help them pay for that birth. So, if you're a smart company and you want to minimize your health costs, I want you to hire the very best employees. But to the extent those very best employees are young and they're male, you'll cut your costs. I'm just leveling with you. I'm not against women. Now ladies, you beat us on life insurance costs. Women live longer. Yeah, rates for women are better than men. And actually the rates for women and men on health insurance begin to even out after childbearing years. So as you get employees who are 50 or 60, regardless of their gender, they're both going to be expensive because they're getting older. Okay. Now why do I include this slide at all? It's simply a reminder to you of what drives health insurance rates. And if you set up a group plan and you get mad at your agent at the end of the year because your rates are awful, well, there's 2 drivers. It's your demographics, and there's several. There's inflation in the industry, and there's the health of your group. And the insurer isn't trying to pull the wool over your eyes. They're trying to help you maintain the group, and they're trying to make a buck to stay in business. So those rates that they're charging, if they're higher, there's something going on in your group that's making it that way. Okay, one more thing about rates. How many of you have a group health plan in place now as a small business? Anybody? You do. How many are in your group, just out of curiosity? 36? Is that right? Did I hear you right? 36. Okay. She's very fortunate because with that size group, she only has to remember 4 numbers during a year. Her insurance company tells her what a single employee is going to cost, regardless of gender, what a married couple is going to cost, what an employee plus child and children is going to cost, and what a family is going to cost. The insurance company takes that census, crunches the numbers, and gives her 4 numbers. And if she has a new hire during the year that wants to come on the plan, she just has to know what their family status is, and she tells them what it's going to cost them. That kind of rating is called composite rating. Okay? And groups generally over 10 in size get composite rates. They're simple to deal with, very easy to compare. If you have a group under 10, with some exceptions, depending on the insurance company, you're not going to get composite rates. You're going to get table rates. And they're tables by gender and age. So if you hire a male, you got to go to the male table, find his age, you can tell him what it's going to cost him. If he's got a wife, you go to he wants to cover, you go to the female table, find her age, add them up, that's what it's going to cost. So that's how your rates come back, either composite or table rate. Okay, as I mentioned, there are financial responsibilities in setting up and having a group health plan. And one of those is, typically employers must incent their employees to participate in the plan by typically paying 50% of the employee-only rate. That's basically a universal rule, and it's there because insurance works on the law of large numbers. For a health insurer to stay in business, they have to attract a good number of healthy folk as well as those who are not healthy. And one way to attract healthy folk who are smart and realize they don't really have an S for Superman or I for invincible on their chest, they will sign up with that kind of incentive because they know group plans are good and they don't want to be caught without good health insurance. So, as you consider this, you have to factor in your cash flow capabilities and your profit considerations. Group coverage is great, but to meet the insurer's requirements, you have to pay and incent those other employees to get in. You don't have to pay anything towards their dependents. If you want to, you can. You might be wanting to grow a Coca-Cola company. I'm sure they pay for dependents. But most small groups don't pay anything towards dependent coverage. All right, in conclusion, on groups, you can evaluate and help to remember the things you need to consider by P words. Porky pig. And the first P, what are your preferences? You're the business owner. I would think the business owner gets the first crack at telling an agent what kind of plan the business wants and needs. Now, you may have a very egalitarian business. Maybe you have a lot of employee meetings and you ask your employees for feedback. There could be some negotiations with employees and some meeting of the mind to tweak the plan a little bit. And somebody has to prefer some things about the plan to get it going. What are the things that are preferential? Well, plan type. There are HMOs, health maintenance organizations. Those are typically the most economical plans. They have the tightest discounts with providers. They typically have the smallest networks for that reason. And there are newer style HMO plans in which you don't have to go through a gatekeeper primary doctor. It's all self-referral. Some of the old style plans are still out there. They have the tightest discounts. Then you have POS plans that are point of service, as they're called. I don't really know how that term originated. But all they are is an HMO plan with an out-of-network benefit. HMO plans typically, if you go out of the network, unless it's a life or limb-threatening emergency, so sorry, you'll pay that bill on your own. And then the richest kind of plan is called a PPO, a Preferred Provider Organization. And it has an out-of-network benefit, and because the discounts negotiated with the doctors and the hospitals in that network are less strict than under an HMO, typically the PPO networks are bigger. So, for instance, Blue Cross in the state, its HMO and point of service plan directory is maybe yay thick, half-inch thick. Its PPO directory is closer to an inch thick. More PPO, more doctors and providers want to be in a PPO directory than in the tighter discount HMO or point of service plan. If you're a business owner and you already have doctor loyalties, particularly if your wife has a doctor loyalty, you better be asking your agent, is my wife's doctor in the network? Because if not, she's not going to like the plan. And I'll tell you, at my house, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. Is that how it is at your house? Better be sure your doctors are in the network. So as you see, pricing, while it's important, isn't necessarily the most important thing. You can make a plan as rich or as cheap as you want to simply by changing the deductible up or down. Last, you need to think about performance. How will the plan perform? If you want a Cadillac plan, then you need a low deductible, and it should perform real well for you. You won't have many out-of-pocket expenses other than co-pays. But if you want to save premium dollars, you're going to need to choose a higher deductible plan, and your employees are going to have a greater share of money coming out of their pocket. If they go to a hospital, have an emergency situation, need to go to a hospital, they're going to pay more than under a Cadillac kind of plan. So those are the P's to consider in evaluating a group health plan.
Hey, John, you have 10 minutes.
10 minutes, all right.
Two topics.
Let's hurry through these. Okay, so now we're going to spend a few minutes warning you about the landmines in the individual health market. I have this slide here simply to let you know that while health reform is out there, each state currently governs the health market. We have the state insurance commissioner, and I would not be out of line if I were to say to you that the insurance commissioner is God to the insurance companies. If the insurance companies hear him say jump, they say, yea, verily, how high? And I was just talking with Don, the outgoing insurance commissioner, John Oxendine. The last thing he did before he left office, his last official act,
Security license,
was to grant himself an insurance license and maybe a realtor's license as well without taking the test. Really? He could do that? I guess he could. Nobody took him to court about it. The insurance commissioner is a very powerful guy or gal in the insurance world. So, the point of this slide is group coverage in Georgia is guaranteed issue. Individual coverage isn't. And that's a reflection of what? The Georgia Assembly, the insurance commissioner, the insurance